Hello and welcome back, everyone. My name is Micah, and in this installment, we'll talk about the possibility of whether Sam is dead and we're seeing his journey through Purgatory as a result of suicide, a couple of new observations that I've made from another film, as well as some reinforcement that Bar Buddy is part of Sam's unconscious mind. While most of the ideas in this video are my own, not all of them are. However, I will be expanding on some theories that are already out there. Let's get started. So if you haven't gathered this about me yet, I watch a lot of movies. Aside from the film club that I participate in, I was watching random movies the other day and came across a movie that I've undoubtedly seen before, but having been a kid when it came out, I didn't think much of it. But at the beginning of the movie Forces of Nature with Ben Affleck and Sandra Bullock, we get this scene. Another strange reference from David Robert Mitchell from even another movie, and perhaps additional reinforcement that Sam has seen this film and is populating his worldview with these obscure references. Or maybe the event planner thought this was an appropriate representation of Hollywood taking and taking from young aspiring actors until they are deflated and have nothing more to give. I've tried searching for the significance of this particular ritual, if you could call it that, separate from the film's utilization, to no avail. I can't seem to connect it to any particular religion, although I believe it's originating from Spain, or even bachelor party celebrations. If you have any knowledge of this, please let us know in the comments. So looking back at Sam's apartment, it's obvious that he has a number of movie posters on the walls. Most prominently displayed several times are the posters of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, Psycho, and The Wolfman. All of these movie plots have to do with essentially an alternate personality or occupying internal force that drives the main characters to do awful things. Spoilers ahead for those who have not seen these films. Mr. Hyde essentially being a monster that Dr. Jekyll turns himself into using a potion. Mrs. Bates, in Norman Bates' mind, drives him to murder women as he dresses up as her and keeps her corpse in his house. And the Wolfman, well, transforming into a wolf after being bitten by a werewolf. Sam similarly has created Bar Buddy as a coping mechanism and to project the worst things about his character onto, as well as using him as a sounding board to reinforce his paranoia, voyeuristic nature, and persecutory delusions. Also, a look back at the scene where Sam and Bar Buddy are having a drink. I've mentioned this scene a couple of times, but notice the timing after Bar Buddy mentions dog killers, this person exits and a bell rings.
There's more than one.
Who knows?
This is another one of those quite deliberate directorial decisions, as sounds like this are generally added in post-production. As Bar Buddy expresses that he's concerned about the possibility of there being more than one dog killer, the door opening and light shining through is something of an illumination that there is only one dog killer and it's Sam. And for a moment here, Sam snaps out of his trance worrying about Sarah and essentially has to remind this part of his unconscious of the truth. To add even a little bit more to this theory, we don't see Bar Buddy interact with any other characters except for Sam, and in very closed scenarios. Although that may be true for a number of other characters, in terms of Sam's friends, even Alan interacts with several other characters.
I like that dress. Hi.
Hi, thanks, Alan.
Crazy makes for good sex. Remember that.
Okay, this is another theory that goes back to before I even knew this film existed, so I'm not taking credit for having come up with it, but I will be presenting some evidence that may be quite illuminating. So, is Sam dead, and are we seeing his journey through Purgatory, seeking absolution and purging his soul of sin? So, to start off, how would Sam have died? I think it's possible that the squirrel at the beginning of the film is symbolic of Sam committing suicide. Now, whether this is by he actually jumped to his death or found some other way, Sam looks visibly disturbed by seeing the squirrel, as anyone probably would, framed with that classic dolly zoom, the change in music, and Sam looking up at the sky. Now, Sam may not be in hell, but Purgatory isn't much better, and time doesn't exactly exist in this kind of scenario.
Welcome to Purgatory.
Good to be here. Needed some time to think about things.
Use it wisely.
While on the subject of time, I wanted to talk about a couple of things. Firstly, when Sam goes to the bookstore and finds the first issue of Under the Silver Lake, the clock at the back of the store is stuck on 6 for both hands and doesn't appear to move, although we only see it briefly. Also, I'd mentioned in a previous video Bar Buddy's tattoos. He has a digital watch tattoo on his wrist, which I believe to be a representation that Sam, being in purgatory, doesn't have any sense of the passage of time. So what would be the point of using a mechanical watch? Okay, in a couple of my previous videos, I'd noted that David Robert Mitchell had made references to The Shining at several points in the film. Now, there are many interpretations of The Shining, but I won't be getting into any of those in this video, although there are some really great ones out there. Although I don't think Stanley Kubrick's The Shining is a straightforward ghost story, we will be operating under the assumption that some of the characters are depicted as ghosts or ghost-like for the purposes of this video. So, after Sam sees the squirrel fall or jump out of the tree, denoting Sam's death or possible suicide, we get this shot, reminiscent of Danny's hallway encounter with the ghost twins.
Come and play with us.
Now, in my first video, I noted that we're not seeing this from the film's interpretation of the scene, from directly behind Danny. Instead, we're seeing more of what would be Danny's perspective as he turns the corner on his tricycle. So Sam is being depicted as the ghost twins, who, as the story goes, were murdered by their father after he lost his mind while being the caretaker at the Overlook Hotel, and is even wearing a light blue shirt reminiscent of the twins' light blue dresses. The next time we see a depiction of something like this that is a reference to Kubrick's Shining is when Sam goes to the Purgatory party and confronts the blonde bride in the bathroom. The bathroom is largely red, like that of the bathroom where Jack Torrance speaks with Delbert Grady, a character that is supposed to not only be dead, but murdered his family years before. Another bathroom scene that is a reference to Kubrick's Shining is after Sam is sprayed by the skunk, he is in a bathtub filled with tomato juice and water. This is similar to the scene where Jack Torrance or Danny see the bathroom hag in the bath. The color palette is similar. Sam is in the bath like the ghost woman, and he's in a pool of red, denoting blood. So we can't talk about Purgatory without talking about the 7 deadly sins.
There are 7 deadly sins, Captain. Gluttony, greed, sloth, wrath, pride, lust, and envy.
Sam embodies most of these, so let's take a look at each one. Firstly, greed. I established in my previous videos that Sam is the thief briefly mentioned by the author, described as hoarding of materials or objects, theft and robbery, especially by means of violence, trickery, or manipulation. We know that Sam lies, steals, and misleads people, so check greed off the list. Next, sloth. Although this can be difficult to define, it is typically thought of as laziness, lack of work, or apathy.
Oh, God. All I'm ever hearing is, what do I do for work? How's work? Where do you work? Work good? You working hard?
Sam, before he begins his journey looking for Sarah, was pretty lazy, unmotivated, about to get evicted, and didn't appear to have a job. Although one could contest that mugging and stealing involves work, he's clearly not gainfully employed or even partly employed. So, sloth is a check. Envy kind of ties in with Sam's covetous nature. He is the thief, so he sees things that others have and that he wants for himself, then he takes it. Interestingly, he projects this onto the homeless man when he admits to hating the homeless.
It's not okay for me to say this, but I fucking hate the homeless. Everybody says we need to take care of them, but I think they're fucking bullies. Poltergeists.
You mean ghosts?
Yeah. All they do is just float around on the edges, on the peripheries, and watch people eating delicious food, drinking beer, and falling in love. They can't participate, so they get jealous, and then they harass us.
And ironically, Sam is about to be homeless himself, and isn't the knight in shining armor that he sees himself as. So, envy. That brings me to pride. Sam is rather arrogant and self-absorbed. He tends to assume that women are always interested in having sex with him.
I wanted it to look like we're here to screw.
We're not. Hey, do you want to go to the bar and get a drink?
I should probably call it a night.
Really?
Yeah.
Just one drink. I mean, I don't want to go home right now.
Not today.
He has delusions of grandeur in terms of how he wished his life had turned out, with his dreams of being a successful actor.
I used to think that I was gonna be someone that like people cared about, like maybe do something important.
And is also reflected in his disdain for the homeless when he insults their very existence. Next up is wrath, one of the more obvious ones Sam displays throughout the film. Described as punishment or vengeance as a manifestation of anger, forceful and often vindictive anger, Sam assaults the children that vandalized his car, murders the songwriter, assaults and belittles Jesus, and is visibly angry at certain points during the film. So we can check wrath off the list. Let's talk about lust. Sam lusts after not only women in the film, but objects, as we've established with him stealing many of his belongings. Sam is almost always thinking of sex, and one could argue that he went on this crazy search for Sarah because she rejected him, and all he wanted was to have sex with her.
Not today.
And as I've mentioned before, Sam associates women that reject or persecute him with dogs, which he shows us when he has his vision about Sarah in the pool. Finally, gluttony. This one isn't necessarily easy to pinpoint, and there's not a ton of evidence that Sam is overeating or coveting the consumption of food, but apparently gluttony can be embodied by an excess of just about anything. Sam does like to drink, however, I don't know if he's an alcoholic. But if we can connect this to sex, obsession, or fixation, then it definitely qualifies. On a food-related note, however, when the actress brings him lunch, instead of giving her a hug or saying a genuine hello, he heads straight for the takeout and brings it to the table. At the beginning of the film, this guy is wearing a shirt from the book All My Friends Are Dead. This is a book that makes jokes and anecdotes about life, death, and everything in between. Sam literally goes to a purgatory party.
Welcome to Purgatory.
Sam beats a fake, false prophet Jesus, or this could be a representation of his relationship with Jesus while he was alive. The presence of flowers or floral patterns throughout the entire film. Billionaires like Jefferson Sevens are trying to ascend to a higher plane of existence, possibly heaven. This poster could depict a woman sinking into purgatory or ascending into heaven. There are a couple of cemeteries and a crypt club present in the film. That's all I had planned for this installment, folks. Feel free to like, comment, share, and subscribe. I'll be absent on an adventure for a few weeks, so hang tight, and I'll be back before you know it.
Used to be 100 years ago. You know, any moron could kind of wander into the woods and look behind a rock or some shit and discover some cool new thing.
In the meantime, take care and keep your eyes open.